This is what happens in Israel when they give away land for peace. Don't let Hamas move their rockets any closer to innocent Israeli families.
Number 2, נראה לי הולכים לישון פה הלילה. עוד אחד.
So as Israel's Prime Minister, I didn't come here to win applause. I came here to speak the truth. The truth is, that Israel wants peace. The truth is that I want peace. The truth is that in the Middle East, at all times, but especially during these turbulent days, peace must be anchored in security. The truth is that we cannot achieve peace through UN resolutions, but only through direct negotiations between the parties. The truth is that so far the Palestinians have refused to negotiate. The truth is that Israel wants peace with a Palestinian state, but the Palestinians want a state without peace. And the truth is, you shouldn't let that happen. Leaders must see reality as it is, not as it ought to be. And the world around Israel is definitely becoming more dangerous. Militant Islam has already taken over Lebanon and Gaza. It's determined to tear apart the peace treaties between Israel and Egypt and between Israel and Jordan. It's poisoned many Arab minds against Jews in Israel, against America and the West. It opposes not the policies of Israel, but the existence of Israel. In 2000, Israel made a sweeping peace offer that met virtually all of the Palestinian demands. Arafat rejected it. Prime Minister Olmert afterwards made an even more sweeping offer in 2008. President Abbas didn't even respond to it. But Israel did more than just make sweeping offers. We actually left territory. We withdrew from Lebanon in 2000 and from every square inch of Gaza in 2005. That didn't calm the Islamic storm, the militant Islamic storm that threatens us. It only brought the storm closer and made it stronger. Hezbollah and Hamas fired thousands of rockets against our cities from the very territories we vacated. The core of the conflict is not the settlements. The settlements are a result of the conflict. The settlements have to be, it's an issue that has to be addressed and resolved in the course of negotiations. But the core of the conflict has always been, and unfortunately remains, the refusal of the Palestinians to recognize a Jewish state in any border. I think it's time that the Palestinian leadership recognizes what every serious international leader has recognized. From Lord Balfour and Lord George in 1917 to President Truman in 1948 to President Obama just 2 days ago right here. Israel is the Jewish state.
This map appeared on the apartheid wall. It was erected on Library Walk in the center of the University of California, San Diego campus. It was built with $8,000 in funds provided by the student government. The first panel purports to represent the state of Palestine in 1946. This is a lie. There was no such state in 1946, or ever. The area on this map, which is falsely labeled Palestine, was actually only 1/5 of the area called the Palestine Mandate. It had been part of the Turkish Empire for 400 years, before the Turks were defeated in World War I. The British victors administered the mandate and promised it to the Jews. The Turks are not Arabs. There never was an Arab state or country called Palestine. But in 1922, the British reneged on their promise. They set aside 80% of the mandate to create the state of Jordan. The map on the apartheid wall shows only the remaining 1/5, most of which was an arid desert. The name Palestine is not Arabic. It is a Roman name for the region around the Jordan River. It means Philistine. The Philistines were not Arabs.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
The allies of Hamas on American college campuses chant, "From the river to the sea." What they mean is the obliteration of the Jewish state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea.
Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea.
ومشروعنا النهائي فلسطين. كل فلسطين كان اعترف للعدو الإسرائيلي.
Jordan occupies 4/5 of the original Palestine Mandate. It is ruled by a Hashemite minority. But there is no movement in the Middle East or on American campuses to liberate the Palestinian Arabs of Jordan from Hashemite rule. There is only the movement to push the Jews into the sea. The second map on the apartheid wall shows the UN partition plan. This plan divided the remaining portion of the original mandate equally between the Arabs and the Jews. But the Arab states rejected the UN's offer. They did not want a state on the West Bank of the Jordan and in Gaza. They did not want a Palestinian state. They wanted to push the Jews into the sea.
ما اصلا ملیتی به نام ملیت اسرائیلی نمیشناسیم. فقط و فقط ملیت فلسطینی.
These are the precise words of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna. In 1948, he said this: "If the Jewish state becomes a fact, the Arabs will drive the Jews who live in their midst into the sea." Hassan al-Banna was a supporter of Hitler. The Muslim Brotherhood translated Mein Kampf into Arabic in the 1930s. The Brotherhood is the creator of both Hamas and the Muslim Students Association, which are leaders of the campaign to destroy the Jewish state.
Is Israel an apartheid state? More and more these days, one hears this charge made. Oddly, when South Africa was an apartheid state, no one accused Israel of being one. The reason the charge was never made then, and shouldn't be made now, is the same. There's no truth to it. To those who know something about Israel or have just visited there once, the accusation is absurd, if not obscene. Indeed, it's a libel. But many people don't know very much about Israel, so let's respond to this accusation. First, what exactly is an apartheid state? And does Israel, or any one other country, fit that definition? Let's look at South Africa, the country that came up with this term. In South Africa, from 1948 to 1994, there was an official policy that declared blacks second-class citizens in every aspect of life. Blacks couldn't vote, couldn't hold political office, were forced to reside in certain locations, couldn't marry whites, couldn't even use the same public restrooms as whites. Not one of those restrictions applies to the many Arabs living in Israel. 1.5 million Arabs live in Israel. They constitute about 20% of that country's population. Every single one of them has the same exact rights as all other Israeli citizens, and they always have. They can vote, and they do. They can serve in the Israeli parliament, and they do. They can own property, businesses, and work in professions alongside other Israelis, and they do. They can be judges, and they are. Here's one powerful example. It was an Arab judge, who sentenced the former president of Israel to jail on a rape charge. And nobody batted an eyelash that an Arab judge would sentence a Jewish president to prison. Some other examples. Rita Mansour is the youngest ambassador in Israel's history. Walid Badir is an international soccer star on Israel's national team. Ismail Khaldi was the deputy consul of Israel in San Francisco. Khaled Abu Tomei is a major journalist with the Jerusalem Post. Galeb Majadel was until recently a minister in the Israeli government. They are all Israeli Arabs, not one is a Jew. And how many people outside of Israel know that all the road signs in Israel, for example, are in English, Hebrew, and Arabic? Not only is Israel not an apartheid state, Arabs in Israel are freer than any Arabs in the Arab world. No Arab in any Arab country has the civil rights and personal liberty that Arabs in Israel have. That's because Israel is a pluralistic, liberal democracy, the only one in that part of the world. Now you might say, well, okay, Palestinians who live inside Israel have all these rights, but what about the Palestinians who live in what are commonly known as the occupied territories? Aren't they treated differently? Well, of course they are. Because they're not citizens of Israel. They are governed by either the Palestinian Authority or Hamas. The only control Israel has over these people's lives takes place when they want to enter Israel. Then they are subjected to long lines and strict searches because Israel has to weed out potential terrorists. And what about the security wall that divides Israel and the West Bank? Is that an example of apartheid? That's rather easy to respond to. Is the security fence being built between the United States and Mexico an example of apartheid? Of course not. Israel built its security wall solely in order to keep terrorists from entering Israel and murdering its citizens. And you know what? It's worked. The wall, most of which, by the way, is an electronic fence, went up in 2002 during a time when Palestinian suicide bombers were regularly murdering Israeli civilians in buses, on streets, and in restaurants. And the moment the barrier went up, terrorism went down almost to zero. So then, why is Israel called an apartheid state? Because by comparing the freest, most equitable country in the Middle East to the former South Africa, those who hate Israel hope they can persuade uninformed people that Israel doesn't deserve to exist, just as apartheid South Africa didn't deserve to exist. And if you don't believe me, just ask the people who know better than anyone else what a lie it is that Israel is an apartheid state, the one out of every 5 Israelis who is an Arab, which is why they prefer to live in the Jewish state than in any Arab state. I'm Dennis Prager.
The Middle East stands at a fateful crossroads, for an epic battle is now underway between tyranny and freedom. And like all of you, I pray that the peoples of the region choose the path less traveled, the path of liberty. Israel has always embraced this path. In a region where women are stoned, gays are hanged, Christians are persecuted, Israel stands out. It is different. We have a free press, independent courts, an open economy. Courageous Arab protesters are now struggling to secure these very same rights for their peoples, for their societies. We're proud in Israel that over 1 million Arab citizens of Israel have been enjoying these rights for decades. Of the 300 million Arabs in the Middle East and North Africa, only Israel's Arab citizens enjoy real democratic rights. I want you to stop for a second and think about that. Of those 300 million Arabs, less than 0.5% are truly free, and they're all citizens of Israel. This startling fact reveals a basic truth. Israel is not what is wrong about the Middle East. Israel is what is right about the Middle East.
What do you say when, as a volunteer for Stand With Us, people say to you, is Israel an apartheid society, as an apartheid country?
Well, it's first of all, everybody that tells that Israel is apartheid, it's one of two cases: or he is telling lie, or he really doesn't know what is apartheid, or he never were in Israel and visited Israel. I suggest to those people to come to Israel or to listen to people like me to know more about the reality in Israel. We are diverse. We are a very plural community, and we have a lot of societies that live together. So it's not true.
Okay, and whatever personal ambitions you have, professional ambitions I'm talking about, do you feel that whether it be a Supreme Court justice or a member of Knesset, do you feel that there would be any obstructions?
First of all, I'm happy that I have the right to choose if I will be or not. I don't think that in Arab countries they really have this right. So maybe in the future.
Okay.
Hamas, the ruling power in the Gaza Strip for the past 5 years, declares that it will be part of the Palestinian Authority's future regime. But is this regime legitimate? In 2006, Hamas was elected to power in the Gaza Strip, beating Fatah. However, within a year, Hamas was ruling every institution of government in the Strip. Hamas methodically murdered its opponents in their hundreds and thousands, opponents whose only crime was their disagreement with the extremist religious ideology of Hamas. Hamas took control of all positions of power and government in the Strip by forcibly and methodically eliminating anyone in those positions affiliated with Fatah. Since taking power in the Gaza Strip, Hamas, like other tyrannical regimes throughout history, imposed a series of decrees attacking the rights and freedom of the individual. The Hamas police forces act as a modesty police, strictly enforcing an Islamic dress code within the Gaza Strip. Women who go in public in immodest clothing are humiliated and arrested, as are unmarried couples walking together in public. Hamas attacks Israeli civilians and also regularly endangers the residents of Gaza, unceasing rocket fire with one goal. These same rockets are fired from residential areas, schools, and hospitals, which are also used to store weapons, and which are chosen deliberately to use their citizens as human shields for Hamas. The Hamas plans to become part of the Palestinian Authority's regime. Does this sound legitimate to you?
Ten facts about Hamas. The Hamas is a Palestinian Islamic organization founded in 1987 in Gaza as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood movement. The Hamas charter explicitly calls for the obliteration of Israel. The charter repeats medieval and Nazi anti-Semitic rhetoric accusing Jews of controlling the world media and of causing all the world's past wars and revolutions. Hamas is responsible for 40% of suicide terror attacks in Israel, which resulted in hundreds of civilian casualties. In June 2007, Hamas seized control over the Gaza Strip and began imposing an extremist religious rule. Hamas government is responsible for extrajudicial executions of all opposition, persecution of journalists, and shutting down human rights organizations. Hamas persecutes Gaza's Christians. Between the years 2007 and 2011, the Christian population in Gaza has dropped by 45%. Between 2001 and 2012, Hamas has fired 12,000 rockets into Israel, more than 9,000 of them after Israel withdrew completely from Gaza in 2005, and evacuated thousands of Israeli families in the hopes of achieving peace. Hamas war tactics include placing ammunition and rocket launchers in hospitals and mosques and near schools, in violation of the Geneva Convention. Hamas is supported by Iran, from which it receives an estimated $300 million per year, military training, and rockets which are fired into Israel's civilian towns. The United States, the European Union, Canada, and Japan all classify Hamas as a terrorist organization. For more facts, please visit us at www.standwithus.com.
Often on the news, we hear the terms occupied territories, 67 borders, and illegal settlements. And the story we usually hear sounds very simple. During the Six-Day War, Israel captured the West Bank from the Palestinians, refused the United Nations' demand to retreat, and illegally built settlements. But is that really the case? We'll start with a simple but extremely important question. From whom did Israel capture the West Bank? From the Palestinians? No. In 1967, there was no Arab nation or state by the name of Palestine. Actually, was there ever? So, whose territory is it? Until 1917, the Ottoman Empire occupied the whole region. After losing in World War I, the Ottomans relinquished their 500-year control to the Allied forces, which decided to divide the old empire into countries. Britain recognized the Jewish people's historical right to their homeland. A small area, equivalent to about 0.5% of the Middle East, was designated for this purpose. But wait a second, do you realize what happened? The Jewish homeland originally included not only the West Bank, but also the East Bank of the Jordan River. I guess you cannot say the Jewish people have not accepted some painful compromises already. With the British mandate ending, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 181 recommended the establishment of two states, one Jewish and one Arab. The Jews accepted it and went on to create the State of Israel, while the Arabs refused the compromise and launched a war to destroy the newly established Jewish state. At the end of the war, a ceasefire line was formed, where the Israeli and Arab forces stopped fighting. At the insistence of the Arab leaders, this line was defined as having no political significance. So, although this line is commonly referred to as the 1967 border, it is not from 1967, and it was never an international border. So, let's return for a moment to our illustration and examine the complete chain of events. Israel's presence in the West Bank is the result of a war of self-defense. The West Bank should not be considered occupied because there was no previous legal sovereign in the area, and therefore the real definition should be disputed territory. The 1947 partition plan has no current legal standing, while Israel's claim to the land was clearly recognized by the international community during the 20th century. That is why the presence and construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank should not be considered illegal. So what's the solution for the dispute over the West Bank? Unfortunately, there is no magic solution. But the only way a solution will ever be reached is if we base our negotiations on legal and historical facts. So please, let's stop using the terms occupied territories and 67 borders. They're simply not politically correct.